we're going to live unhappily until we do. Because it's only overcoming these things that brings us real happiness. But so, what I want to talk about now is that tolerating the intolerable. And I want to talk about at the highest level, because this is the highest principle comes down to earth in our lives as well. Now, I've said the archangels are most tolerant with humans. But we also have the ones called the fallen ones. That in the beginning, when God's will pleasure to manifest and create everything starts, some spirit beings bypass the archangelic idea and decide to go off on their own, refusing to obey the divine plan. And these are the ones called the fallen angels. But they're not angels. They haven't gone through the divine plan to become angels. They're just spirit beings who refuse and rebel against the divine plan, preferring to think of themselves as greater. They don't want to serve man.
But then why did God let that happen?
Say again?
Why did God let that happen?
It has to be in the divine plan so that all this can work out and we can be tested. And
that was supposed to be.
Yeah, okay. But it's not because God said, okay, you guys get to be the fallen angels. Okay. Everyone the first gift of God is free will. So everyone has free will, but to show that, I think it has the play has to show out where some people disobey it or some beings disobey it. But by doing that, they are immediately deprived of the creative power the archangels have, and they fall in terms of vibration, and they drop into the etheric counterparts of the material world, the psychical world, and the noetical world. And there they put influences on human beings. They can't possess human beings, but they can influence them, but only through that human being's own elementals. So if you have elementals of negativity, fear, any of those undesirable ones, and you start to feel them, that's when they come to you and they start to put a pressure, like, you're right, you should feel angry, that person shouldn't do it to it. They like whispering these voices in our ears, and they cause a lot of trouble, they cause a lot of suffering on earth. But do the archangels of light fight with the shadows of the light? They're called the shadows of the light because they're doing the opposites, right? No archangel can fall. Once it goes through the divine plan, it becomes an archangel. It's not possible for the archangel to fall at that point. But these spirit being ones have by refusing to obey the divine plan. They can't take possessions of a human being, plant, or animal, as it's mostly said. The ones in the Bible where you hear about demon-possessed people, those are human nature demons, not the demons from the fallen ones. And when the fallen ones create an elemental, it becomes the demons. That's what the demons are. So all they can do is influence human beings through the etheric. But we're always, at any point, we always have the ability to reject or accept their influences. Now, as opposed to this, archangels have 7 degrees of luminosity, they call it. These fallen ones have 7 veils of darkness. And they try to influence a human being. The darkest veils are the 7th veils, which are really the ones that murdering kind of impulses that people feel come from these guys. So human beings, according to their development, choose which shadowy veil they become covered by. The fallen ones cannot force a car thief to become a killer. Human beings, by their own free will, choose their own veils. And these are chosen subconsciously according to the thoughts, desires, and emotions that people harbor and express. So they don't really have power over our bodies. And no fallen one has any power over our inner self. But the personalities allow the influence of these things, which brings all these undesirable things that Jeff was mentioning. And it brings consequences to our bodies and organs. And this makes the personality responsible, not even the fallen ones, because we're accepting it. If I say go out and kill somebody and you do, that's not my fault. It's you're listening to some wrong voice.
Right.
Yes?
Then what is an exorcism? Are they exorcising elementals?
Human in nature demons, the negative, the worst of the worst human elementals, because no real demon has the ability to possess a human body. These are our own, and that's what makes us responsible. That's why it can happen. That's why it can happen.
So is this the same thing as Lucifer and Satan coming down through these fallen angels?
What's that?
Lucifer.
No, Lucifer has got a bad rap. He's not a, he really did. He's an archangel. He's the bearer of light. He really is. He's the bearer of light. He's not what people imagine and they tell the stories about. And his elemental is a Shamael. And Shamael is in charge of the earth element and also the administrator of the law of cause and effect, as is Lucifer. So to human beings, it's like they say he's the bad guy because they get these consequences that they themselves have created. It's like a criminal saying the police are evil. Well, sure, to them they're evil because they're going against them and catching them for doing their bad things. But Lucifer is not a fallen one at all. So obviously this is allowed by God in the divine plan. Thus, the archangels are obliged to tolerate. They don't fight against them. They're obliged to tolerate them in the etheric counterparts of their created worlds. So these guys have entered as illegal aliens into these archangels' world, but they don't fight them, they don't cast them out. They could, but they don't because of the divine plan. These guys are allowed to do this to test human beings so that we can evolve up. And so if the archangels are doing this tolerance, of course, the Logos is doing the tolerance as well. They're very tolerant. The Supreme Selfhood is very tolerant for the fallen ones. Just as the Logos is very tolerant for our mistakes when we become wrapped in our own veils of darkness. And they allow that personality to work it out for the purification of the personality. So, the absolute beingness does and does not tolerate the fallen ones. The Son of God tolerates them, but the Holy Spirit does not tolerate them, so it deprives them of their creative power. So no fallen one, no demon can create anything. They couldn't create a bug. So, but they can tempt. They can tempt us. That's where the temptation comes. So, and the influences they come on us are like lust, gluttony, greed, sloth, wrath, envy, pride, and so many, many others. And the entire collection of the group elemental called egoism, because egoism is not one thing, it's a collection of many things, many elementals. And we live and feel these influences. If we allow these influences in, we're going to get bad consequences, not as a punishment, but again, as a consequence to wake us up to the illusion we've had. All human beings have this internal sense of right and wrong. So we can accept or reject it if we will. The choice is ours to make and the consequences are ours to take. So that's a little something about patience and tolerance. We're going to speak about endurance later, but keep in mind that it's really patience and tolerance is what keeps two hearts joined together in this world and the next.
Daniel, in Joshua Emmanuel's book, or the book about the Christ, it talks about like Lilith, and are those like the fallen ones?
Lilith is an elemental of the fallen ones. It's
So
a
she's
demon.
a fallen
Lilith,
one.
yeah. So anyway, inside each of us, to varying degrees, there's a coup d'etat going on, a revolt, an uprising that mostly goes unnoticed in a person. And the insurgents causing this uprising are the elementals, our own elementals. Well, let's say the negative pole of our egoism. They resist and they refuse to follow the authority of the inner self, which is the source of the personality itself. The personality couldn't be here if it didn't have that inner self as the core. But it doesn't, it's again, free will. The inner self doesn't interfere with the free will of the personality. It can go just as far astray as it wants. When we notice this, we feel kind of a double feeling, the disobedience of our egotism and of our personality, because it feels like it's losing valuable things by cooperating with the inner self. And the things it feels like it's losing are the illusionary ideas and aims, the cherished emotions and desires. At the same time, you feel this strong inner self that knows and can rightly manage all these things. It's that central point inside of us that receives impression. So there's a constant battle going on inside of us. Maybe it's way down in your subconscious, you're not knowing it, but at some point, not necessarily in every life, but at some point it can really come up and you can really feel this struggle of the light and the shadows. So, but sometimes this conflict, it starts to rotate. You go back and forth and back and forth, and it starts rotating so fast it becomes like a cyclone, and you're on like a boat on the sea just tossed around by the cyclone. If you can make your way to the center of the cyclone, it's peaceful. This is a major teaching in mysticism. They draw a circle, and the mystic stands in the circle and doesn't go to the edge, because the edge you can get thrown off. You all remember that thing in the playground at school, the round circle, and you get on it, you spin it till you throw up or fall off. You know, as you go to the center, you don't feel any force throwing you away because you're centered. And that's the way we should go through our life, trying to feel that core, feeling that I-ness in ourselves, and not get to the periphery, because then we lose control.
Great example.